If, like me, you find managing state in your applications a little bit tricky and often error prone, then this is going to be a talk that you're going to want to perk your ears up for and listen closely. Your next speaker of the 2021 CityJS conference is Maya from Tel Aviv in Israel. Maya is a senior software engineer with Microsoft, and in this talk, Maya is suggesting you ditch the booleans and manage state properly. Who knew we weren't doing it properly to begin with? Anyway, if you have any questions about any of the content of this talk for Maya, please do join our Q&A session, which will be beginning straight after this talk over on GatherTown. Keep your posts coming in on Twitter using the hashtag CityJS2021 and keep those comments rolling in wherever you are watching along online. Without further ado, Maya, I hand the stage over to you.
Hi, everyone. Okay. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you again in CityJS. Too bad we cannot meet each other in person, so I hope you enjoy me virtually, even though I really hope we can see each other on stage. So today I'm going to talk about smart and controllable UI with XSpace. What it is about? Well, let's just find out. So first, I'm Maya Shavin. As you know, you can always reach me at Maya Shavin or mayashavin.com, which is my website. I like to write about on the JavaScript and front-end best practices and new technologies. So feel free to hit me up on Twitter or GitHub. Okay, so when we talk about stage management, we normally would think of on the framework of state management like Vuex, Redux, React.js, or Markets. All of these state management frameworks are very good, are very well known, well maintained, and it's proven to be very, very scalable. However, when you use this state management framework, do you understand what is state management in general? Well, according to according to Wiki, state management is actually how you manage the flow of different user interface control. What does it mean by user interface control, state flow with different user interface control? Well, let's say we have a local state of the UI when toggle, or something a little bit more complex like the traffic lights from red, yellow to green. Or we have a little bit more complex when the loading state of an application from login or it's already login or loading some new data, or even more complex like this user flow of the whole application. Each of the screen or each of the view here is actually a state, and user move from one state to another depends on what the action is going to be. So let's take a look at a very simple example. We have a component. What it does is that if user click on the button Get Kitty, we will fetch an image of Kitty from the background and displays on the screen to user. Well, the example is written on Vue 3 using the new Vue composition API, which is similar to React Hook. So you probably will find, if you don't know Vue, it doesn't really matter because it's very similar to each other. Okay, so that's it. We have a local state, which is the Kitty image, and we set it with started with initial value of empty string. And then we have a function to update the local state whenever user clicks on Get Kitty button. And then we have a render component. We have a render function to render the component itself. Okay, cool. That's it, right? All of these are very simple, very straightforward. And the outcome is, yeah. What happens if later someone says, okay, but it's loaded correctly, but what if user continue to do multiple clicks, like they keep clicking until the image load, because image loading takes quite some time, depending on how big is the image. Or what happens if I want to disable the click so that user would not have to do like keep clicking and making sending the request to the server several times. So I need to disable when the user already click on the button. Or about the case that while we're waiting for the image, we want to have a loading state, some sort of message to tell the user that this is loading. Or in case that the image is not loaded, what error are we going to display? All of this is the extra features on the newer case come from the initial case that we have. So from that small of a piece of code in our component, it can be a little bit bigger. Let's say now we add the e-loading to make sure that we can check whether it's loaded or it's still loading or it's not loaded. Or we have an error message which we can customize it according to the stage of the image loading. Cool. So now we also have, finally, we need to add into the component itself how we're going to display it, the if, else, and the other things. And it's getting bigger and bigger depends on how much more features we need to put in order to handle all the use case needed for this such a small component. This approach, unfortunately, is very common. We call it a bottom-up approach, which from the basic action, we can add another new action, another layer, another wrap around all the set of basic action of the component, with more bug fixes, new action. And then from there, we can add another new action whenever we got a new feature request, new bugs need to be fixed, and so on. Yes, this bottom approach works fine, but in the long term, it's proved to be very, very buggy and very, very hard to maintain and very hard to retrieve back to make sure that everything you add in will still working. And like for example, every time you add a new feature, you need to make sure that all the tests pass, or you need to make sure that there's no extra bug will come up, and eventually it will give you more and more require more and more effort to maintenance. So what's the downside of bottom approach? It's hard to maintain. It's hard to test because you keep adding cover up with something, adding more features. So it's the whole test. You need to make sure that it works with the old test, adding a new test, adding extra test if the use case collide to each other, and it's hard to understand because it will be because it's like a batch. You cannot really understand when the code become very big, and eventually you will end up with something that you don't even know what happened, and that's the user is the one who have to suffer from it. And that's why we got finite state machines. Okay, so what is finite state machines? In other terms, it's called deterministic finite automata. Well, you don't have to care about this definition because very theoretically, it's a deterministic finite automaton is represented formally by phi 2. Yeah, no one understands that. So let's just skip it because it's very, 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 very theoretical. So I like to think of a deterministic finite automaton or state machines is mean it's a whole state management that contain one initial state. It starts with one initial state. It has a finite number of states, and together it has a finite number of events. And all the states connect to each other through a transition map triggered by events. For example, you have a loading or loaded. So from the state of e-loading, move to state loaded is triggered by a related event. So, for example, for the fetch functionality, we probably use fetch a lot, right? So for fetch, we have one state, it's called idle state. And whenever user calls fetch, it will move from idle state to loading. And once the fetch result, it will move to success, or it moves to reject. And on failure, which is after you reject the fetch, it also can move to loading again if user trigger retry. So some of the very famous example of this same state machines promises as in that way callbacks and observables. That's a very common. This is how we implement promise of fetch when using states. So let's go back to our previous complex example with the user flow from moving from one view to another according to user user actions. So after you look at this, actually, when you look at this whole mockup, you look at this whole component and how the user interaction on the user flow, we can say that the user component are dependent. There's no such thing called a user component or user controls or user views are independent, because in order for you to move from one view to another, you need to actually change the state of the previous view, change the state of previous UI component, and then move to a new state, which is the current view component. And all the transitions are based on action. Let's say you log in, user login, which means you have to trigger the action login in order to move from the login page to actually log in the dashboard or whatsoever. And on the action, actually events trigger on click button, input, text input, on chain, and so on. So to be short, building user interface, or we can call it building user flows to be more professionally. So or you can call it building user diagram or building user trees. All of this are actually you're building grabs. And what is grabs? Grab is state, grab of states, and that's why we have state XState. XState is a state machines and state charts for modern web that take this implement finite state automata a concept in JavaScript and TypeScript. And it has a very good documentation if you want to try it out. And currently it's support on React, Vue, and I believe also Angular, and also Svelte, and quite a few more. Yeah, Svelte. Probably not Angular. Anyway, so they have a very nice documentation with tutorial guides and explain very carefully about the concept. And basically, what does it provide you? So it provides you a set of API to create the machine, to create the state machine for your needs, and then we can interpret on the machines to create your own instance or service to use in your local component, and then execute on this machine or instance on your component to be able to interact, to be able to update and to work. And finally, you can also manage different state machine, different machines instance in the whole application to make it into a whole system. So some of the concepts of state of XState are machines, which is the state machine itself. Transition is moving from one state to another. Events are only events that were triggered, that probably triggered by the state machine. And action is what action the user take, and the action would basically trigger the event itself, and of course states. So all of these are the concepts. So how we do that? Let's take the fetch. Let's check the fetch implementation before. That's the diagram before, and let's implement it with state machines. So XState, and let's say the initial state will be idle. And then we have the state idle, which on fetch we move to loading, and on loading we move to resolve if it's we move to succeed if it's the event is resolved, and move to failure if the event is rejected. And then on success stage, we just is final, so we don't need to trigger any event. And on failure, we can do an event called retry, and the target will be the loading state, and so on. And that's all it needs to create a machine for fetch. Let's take an example of another simple toggle button, which has to say active or non-active. Let's say inactive, we toggle, it will go to active. And then active, we toggle again, it goes to inactive. Simple enough, right? So how do we do it in Xday? We import the machine from Xday. We create a machine with ID, with context, whatever what you want to add inside. The initial state will be inactive, and we have two states: inactive on toggle, we move to active, and active on toggle, move to inactive. That's it, right? Well, I know what you're talking right now. It's a lot of code on screen, and it's not actually something that's practical enough. So let's say I hope I have enough time, but let's do some code. Okay, let's do some code. So I have the button here, and what it does is it's actually just toggle between. Let's say here I have, yep. So let's try it. So you see it toggle between inactive and active. So all I have in the beginning, I have, because I have two states, so I say, okay, let's have a boolean. So I say false or true. So I set a false, which means it's inactive, and true means it's active. So I have a toggle button, and I just need to change toggle its state value, different value. All of these are written in Vue 3 using Composition API, but it's very similar to React. So you can just use instead of the setup function, you can just use it at the render function of React, and the ref here is like uref in React. Okay, so and then I have background style and indicator style, which is to make sure to change the background to gray or to blue whenever the state changes the style, and so on. And the implementation is very simple. Okay. Okay, so now how I'm going to do it with state machine, with Xday. So I have a toggle service. Oh, sorry, no. I have a toggle, which I have a context. I have an initial state, which is active, and then I have a toggle event, the target active, and then similar to inactive. For active state, we have a target would go to inactive. Okay, so let's try. Let's flow is no. So first of all, I need to use interpret in order to tell Xday that I want to get an instance of the machine I defined before, to make sure that all the machines are actually an instance and not using the same machine and mess up the host global machines. So we have, let's say we got toggle service, and then we do interpret from Xday, and then we do toggle machine. Great. And now I need to do toggle service, toggle service. Yeah. And we do initial state, because I want the first one to be the initial state of the machine. So the state machine. And instead of doing the toggle say equal values like this, we do a little bit different. Yeah. So sorry, not this. So we do toggle service send. Because it's toggle, so we only need to send toggle, which is the event itself. And then we need to start the service, because if we don't start, the service will not work. So we do toggle service start, right? But we also need to make sure that the service change the state, the ref that we have, the local state we have, to the new state. Because this is just create a ref from the initial state. It will not up whenever the initial state update, it will not update. So we do toggle service, and then we do on transition, which is on the transition, and we have the new state. And then we can do something like this. And then we have the state dot value equal to new state. And to make sure, we can do console log dot state dot value. Okay, so now everything is great. However, this doesn't work yet, because right now the state is not a constant, it's not a Boolean value. So we need to do a little bit of change, which state machine give us a function called matches. which all I need to do is to put it inside and put the correct state I'm looking for here. And similar, just copy and paste. Okay, and now it should work. Right? Right. I need to make sure. Oh, yeah. So I have here. Oh, yeah. So you can see here it works. And if you look at the new state itself, oh, my computer is something is weird. Never mind. So basically, it's supposed to see if you see the state, you will see that current is inactive and all the information of the state here. Okay, so that's one thing. Right now, when we look at this, we can see that here we do the matches and we have the background. Another thing we can improve using XState is that we can use in the context of XState. So let's go to here and we can put the whatever, let's say the background CSS color and the background CSS style in the context, and we can use assign, which we assign is a function, an API function that allow you to assign the new value on actions. So we assign the new value for background when we change to active and so on. The same similar things to inactive. And now we can just go back here and we can just very safely delete all of this because we don't need it anymore. And we can just do like this, stay dot context dot background. Yep. And we do stay dot context dot indicator. And save. And let's try. And you can see it still works. Okay, cool. That's the one thing. But now the next question is, what if I want to use it at the hooks in the whole application so I can use it everywhere in the app? How do I do that? Because this one is start really inside the component and you cannot use it outside the component itself. So let's go to the, so we create a service. We're using the service hook for Vue. Similar hooks are available for React. So all you need to do is import a service, and basically you interpret the machine and you start a machine and you create and you export a function called use toggle machine that return a hook instance of the service. That's the service for toggle. And now in here, we don't need all of this. We don't need all of this. We don't need let's say we don't need all of this, and we can do cons. Now we can do cons, and we can do like use toggle machine, and then we can pass nothing, I guess. And now we can have a state and a send function from this machine. And then now we don't need the host machine here. You just need to send us toggle, and we also don't need all of this because it's already integrated inside the component itself. And also don't need the star and so on. So all of this we don't need. Right, we only need one. And it should work the same way. Just to make sure it works. Right. And now what if I want to use it, like I said before, we want to use it globally. So when we want to actually retrieve the information from the machine, or we can use the machine in another place, we can just use toggle machine, and we can pass the get the state, and then like here we pass it in the app to display the value of the current toggle. And then you can see here that it's become mode inactive. And then when we change the thing, it become mode active. Okay, cool. And you can do a lot of things, not just limit to this. You can also do other, build a whole complex in application, how complex state management using the XState. And this is just the beginning. Okay. Okay, right. So what is the advantage of XState? Well, you see, we can visually have a very clear view of the code flows because it's a machine. You need to know exactly what state you're going to transit, and all the state are listed there, which each of the state have the target to the next state and what is going to handle it. So every time when you add another state, you know exactly what you need to test or how the flow going to be. And you can also reuse the code of the machine to different machines because everything is very isolated and very scalable. And because of this, you can have a better code coverage. And it's easy to debug and very easy to spot bugs because it's a machine. You can really see straightforward. And also, like I said before, scalability and maintenance is super, super simple. And because of this, it gives you a chance to have a better code design and planning. So other resources that you can take a look is using the word statechart and especially the XState visualizer. I highly recommend you to use XState visualizer because it allows you to actually visualize your state in using the chart. So you can have a very good community in XState and also other things like state machine in Vue.js if you use Vue.js and so on. Other things I can show you if I XState visualizer. So you can see here that this is the visualizer. And here you can see here you can actually change, and let's say if I want to change here to loaded, sorry, loaded. So if I update it, you can see here, oh, sorry, I need to change it loaded. Yeah. Never mind. Loading. Oh, here, the target. Yep, loaded. You can see here all the things update whenever you update here, and you can drag and drop things here, so it will generate for you the whole code that you can use for the machine. And it's super, super simple. And that's it. Just before we finish, my name is Maya. Again, I'm a senior software engineer at Microsoft. Just started. And I'm also a co-maintainer of Storefront UI, which is a UI framework for e-commerce. I'm also a Nux ambassador and an MD of Cloudinary, which my previous company that I work for. And I like to talk about anything about front end and web. I'm really like to talk about best practice and exchange knowledge on this matter. You can always reach out to me at Maya Shavin on Twitter and GitHub. And thank you very much for joining my section.
Maya, thank you very much for that super informative talk on managing state within our large and growing code bases. Super exciting stuff. Thank you. And I'm sure everybody watching along at home will be joining me to give you a huge around the world round of applause. Now, if that talk has left you in a little bit of a state yourself and you've got some questions about how you can manage it within your applications, please do join us on GatherTown for the upcoming Q&A session, which will be starting any moment now. Don't forget, you can keep posting along on social media using the hashtag CityJS2021, as well as keep the comments rolling in on YouTube. It's been really good to see everything you've been enjoying today.
I say it every time, but I do like it when he does the pointing. It looks so authoritative. I like it. Maya, thank you very much for delivering an amazing talk as part of this year's CityJS. I'm sure everybody watching along took an awful lot away from it. And I'm gonna dive straight into a question that I have for you.
Okay.
Rather than taking anything from the audience just yet. if you are learning to code, and to put the context around this, I'm teaching one of our AV team at the moment to code in a very basic way. Do you think that it's worth introducing state charts and flow charts and all this kind of stuff very early on in their development learning process, or should we wait until a little bit later on? What's your thought on that?
I would say state machines concept actually requires a bit of learning curve because on this machine, all of this final state, automata, and all of this concept is pretty. It's not that trivial to developers, to be honest. So I think it should be introduced at early stage because it's also good for understanding how state management works and how we should like design our own system later on. Well, it's very good for developers. Yeah.
Oh, does that mean I have to drag it all out from the back of my brain now?
Well, you can just learn slowly, like together with other like Redux or React, RxJS or MobX or so on. It should be okay. It doesn't really need you to stop aside and study. Only when you study, you can use other things. You can always combine it together.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy using this. It's like it makes things more organized to me.
Okay, so that's for you personally. You think that's the biggest benefit? It helps you just straighten things out in your mind, I guess.
Yeah, like it actually changed the way you work. Like normally when we got let's say a feature or an application to write, we tend to jump in the code and start to write out, try it out, see how it goes, and then add in, basically the bottom up approach. And that's actually proven to be not good, not very beneficial if our project grow to be a very, very complex application later on. So this way, with this kind of concept, you have to stop, think ahead what you want to do and how you scale the system later on. So for a very large project, you can actually prevent the whole legacy code base from early age. So you have to stop. For developer myself, I have to stop. I have to plan, and then I can develop from my planning.
Okay, so planning, I mean, across the board, planning is always a good idea, whether it's state charts, flow diagrams, anything like that.
Well, from saying until doing is take a long time. That's a different story, but yeah, it's also to change the way of thinking. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get that way of thinking into his brain early on. Early on.
Good luck.
Like we've already had some comments today saying don't teach them React unless they're looking for a job. Learn the basics if they want to tinker, and I think all of this kind of stuff feeds into that. It's really, really good.
Well, I would say if you learn React, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't learn React before you learn JavaScript. But if you learn React, then make sure you also learn JavaScript.
I mean, I haven't told him yet, but he actually needs to know C++ in order to do what he wants to do. But that's a story for another day.
Oh no.
Yeah, oh no. If you're listening, Giz, oh no from the expert. So do you want to just really, really briefly tell me a little bit more about you, how you ended up at Microsoft? One of the themes of this conference, and one of the things we're trying to do is to encourage juniors and new entrants to the industry to aspire to those big roles 5 years into their future and then work backwards from there. I'm going to guess you didn't have a straightforward path to getting employed by Microsoft.
No, I didn't really plan to join Microsoft. I was pretty much how to say against joining corporate because it's for many reasons for coverage. Well, and also in my place we have a lot of startups that also learn a lot from them. So it really was not and what was unexpected.
Okay.
Yeah, but corporates have changed, to be honest. So I really enjoy here. If you ask me what advice should I have for like junior or whoever just started coding and they want to get into Microsoft or any Google or any Facebook, I would say that study hard. Not study hard, but like understand what you're doing. It's all about, let's say, it's really easy to pick up React and build applications from React or from Vue or from any framework, but it's harder to understand why this component works this way, why React hooks is better, why class component have more trouble. Let's, for example, for have more trouble than functional component, why we prefer one way to another, and how and on the performance thing about JavaScript. Basically, if you learn JavaScript, you need to understand why you are using JavaScript, or anything that you choose, or CSS, any framework that you choose, and because that's what uh, on the that's what normally get asked in the interview. Also always participate like open source projects or create. You don't even need to participate in any famous open source project. You can create your own open source project, play around with it, make sure that you know what you're doing. And if someone asks you why do you do like why you design this feature in your open source project, you know how to explain the reason why you choose this way and not the other way. I That's all I can tell you. Like I I like to play around with code. I always learn, and when the opportunity comes, it doesn't mean that you have to take it right away. It 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 doesn't really mean it is this is the second time I got an offer from Microsoft. So, and it's better. The other time I actually rejected once, and I'm wait for, and then after that they contact me again after a year, and this time everything was great, everything is what I wanted to be and what I found interesting, and I got a better experience and better package also. So it's not like, I'm not saying that you should reject, but I'm saying that if that's not what match what you are expected, where are you expecting, then think twice before you do. Sometimes life happens for a reason. Sometimes it's better if you go to a smaller company or to a different company, learn as much as you want, grow as much as you want, always learn, and then you can come back and contribute much better and have a better position in negotiation also.
Yeah, I think there's when those big names pop up, people kind of lose their mind and just want to grab it before the opportunity.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling when they contact me the first time. We're like, what, Microsoft? No. But yeah, but it's like a while, It's also it's again also about your self confidence. Like you need to be very confident because you know how much you work. Don't beg for something. It's you have standing. It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
You get the offer that you're happy, and they get the employee that's happy with the offer. So yeah.
And both sides get more out of it like that, don't they? If everybody's happy, everybody does a lot better work.
Right.
On both
Exactly.
sides.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So we've not got too much time left. I think we've just hit our 2-minute warning. So I'm going to throw a few rapid fire questions at you. And we've been putting these questions to all of the speakers. And we just want quick answers, but feel free to add a little bit more if you need to. So the first one is the most important question on every developer's lips: tabs or spaces?
Oh no. Tap.
Tabs. See, yesterday it was all spaces, and today it's been pretty much all tabs. I wonder what
No,
tomorrow will
why? I don't understand those spaces. I don't understand the spaces. I tap. It's so simple. Tap, tap, tap.
I mean, I've got mine set up to tab, but it puts 2 spaces in the code, so I kind of sit on the fence on this one, I'm afraid. React, Vue.js, or Angular?
Wow. Wow, that's a difficult question.
It is.
You know what? Like I always say, my heart belongs to Vue. So I like Vue. I like how they build their ecosystem. It's super easy and super straightforward for developers. So the developer experience is great. The starting point is great. It's so easy to jump up to Vue, to start with application, to learn the concept, to write applications. But I'm working with React daily. So I actually understand that you React is great for something else, and it's hard to choose because React is also it's a library, it's not a framework. So yeah, and if you have to choose the best, I'd probably say for more front end, for UI, I choose Vue.
Okay, and I think based on that, I'm going to know what the answer to the next one is: front end or back end?
Of course, front end.
Of course,
Of
where
course.
all the cool kids hang out.
Well, you cannot see the cool backend without a front end,
No,
right? So
true.
even if you build a very good system, a very smart AI without a front end, how do you display things to people?
I mean, that's the best argument I've ever heard. I've never heard that one before, but perfect. And finally, and this is the really, really, really big one, and this is going to go into your online ether, so it'll be recorded forever. So be
Oh my
careful what
god.
you answer.
Oh my god.
Apples or bananas?
What? Okay, apple. Apple.
Apples
Apple.
again.
Well, I don't like bananas. I hate bananas. Well, I like fried bananas, but I don't like bananas. So yeah, apples. Also, apples products.
Yeah, true, true. I mean, surely you're working off of Surface Books, though, right?
Yeah, I'm working with a Lenovo. But
Fantastic.
anyway, well, we have a saying, one apple keeps the doctor away. I don't know if it's true, but yeah, they have a saying like that. So, which
Uh,
means apple is better.
Can't argue with that. If it keeps the doctors away, it's good enough for me. Maya, it
Right.
has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you once again for being part of this year's conference lineup. It was a pleasure to host you and to join you for this conversation. If you're watching along at home, we are running a little bit behind, but we will be caught up within a few talks' time. So just keep on rolling around, and don't forget to visit those sponsor booths. I hear on the wind that DAZN have an amazing prize for you to win. So go and find that and check it out. Maya,
Okay, thank you.
once again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. Yeah.